You're listening to the Ball Talk podcast with me, Ryan Bailey. This podcast is brought to you by Adapt Athletic Performance and Therapy. Head over to Instagram and give them a follow at adapt_clinic. If you enjoyed this podcast, don't forget to leave a like, share it with your friends, and hit that subscribe or follow button as well. Without further ado, let's get straight into the podcast. Going. This is episode number 39 of the Ball Talk podcast, brought to you as always by Adapt Athletic Performance and Therapy. Today I'm joined by Cahair O'Kane for the first time on the podcast, Joe Sheridan and Enda Smith. It's your second time round, lads. You're very welcome.
Thank you. Cheers, Wayne.
So lads, we'll jump straight into first, it's not the first one that's on, but it is one of the three provincial finals this weekend. We're going for the Ulster Senior Football Championship final, and to our Ulster correspondent, first of all, Cahair, I'm sure you're looking forward to this one.
You would normally look forward to Ulster finals. It's going to be rare not actually been at it, but look, it's set up for Donegal, to be honest. I'm not as me trying to flatten the game before it's even started, but it's very, very, very hard to make a case for Cavan winning it. I think I heard yesterday that the bookies have never ever priced an Ulster final as short for one side, as they have. I think Donegal are 1-14 on, and it probably does reflect the thinking in that Cavan were in last year's final and got hockey really weren't at the pitch of it, and the thing about it was that I would say probably most people recognise that Donegal are a better side now than they were 12 months ago. They look even more threatening in attack, and they have a wee bit more option as well. But Cavan, I can remember, I wasn't at last year's final either, but I watched on TV, and I remember the Cavan changes being announced before the game, and I just put my head in my hands, and I thought, like, they took out from the team they had named Cian Mackey and Thomas Callaghan and Conor Madden, three attacking players, and put in Kieran Brady and Jared Smith, two halfbacks, and Oisin Pearson was a sort of replacement forward, and you could tell what they were trying to do from that. It was very much about contain, and they never really had a cut at it. And the problem being now that I think they'll be so scared of the contain option after the experience of last year that they're probably more minded to have a cut at it, and this might be the time for the contain option, because Donegal, we saw what they did to Armagh. If you allow Donegal to play, they can just rip you in bits at the minute, and that would be the worry, that it could be a short final.
Donegal, they look fantastic this year, but just to go to Cavan first, and Enda, you only played Cavan. We're probably talking 4 weeks ago now. Looking at them on that day, I watched it on. It was live. I think the game was live on TG Cahair that day, and they looked flat. And you went down with, I think, 9 changes to the team that played the week before. They just looked a completely different team to what we've seen the last few weeks. This sort of underdog mentality that they've had going into games the last number of weeks, and coming out on top in games that at halftime they shouldn't be coming out on top of.
Yeah. I suppose for that particular day for us, it was strange for us that we were going down. We were missing, I think, 14 players off the panel altogether. Like you said, there was 8 or 9 changes from the week before against Armagh, but we were going down there we were using that as a bit of motivation for us. So we were well up for the game, and we thought we had a good enough team out on the day that we'd be able to give them a go. But I think probably Cavan probably did underestimate us a small bit in that. They would have heard about, obviously, we were missing the amount of players we were missing. Because in saying that, they still could have kind of dragged it out at the end. They did miss a lot on the day, I remember. And we were kind of holding on near the end. But in fairness, what they've done, and that was a week before they played Monaghan, so they were relegated that day to Division 3 after being within a chance to go up to Division 1. And like, to be honest, I didn't have a hope for them against Monaghan the week later. I really didn't. Just after Monaghan were quite solid in the way they finished the league, they just they did enough. But in fairness to them, they've picked it up unbelievably well. Like the Monaghan game, obviously, but I think last week was nearly more impressive. We were really against the Cosh last week and down at their tails up and just pulled it out of the bag. And in fairness to them, I would be along the same line as Cahair. I don't see we had played Donegal ourselves as well previous to that, and like they were very good the day we played them. And I think if Cavan have to start well, they really do, and they haven't started well in any game they played. And I think Donegal won't let them back into it if it happens. I really don't think they will, and that's where I'd fear for them. That they've been holding Thomas Gallagher the last few weeks. He's been brilliant when he's been coming on in the games, but can you afford to hold him and wait till the second half when it could be over? I don't think so. Not against Donegal, not against a Division of 1 team. So I do think it's Donegal there to win, but if Cavan are to feature, then you really need to start their strongest team. And as Cahair said, contain them as long as you can, but definitely do not go behind. Do not go out and try and I suppose get into situations that they've got in the last couple of weeks.
And Joe, from an attacking point of view as well, looking at Donegal, I think Ryan McHugh said it was something like their first seven scores against Armagh last week were from 7 different players, and Michael Murphy and Ryan McHugh hadn't scored. Like the attacking threat that Donegal are bringing this year, I could be wrong on that point, but it was something along them lines. The attacking threat they're bringing this year is serious.
Yeah, it's coming from all angles. Like, to be fair, you've got I think 13 scores in total at the weekend, and as you were saying, like Michael Murphy hasn't really got going. He's probably sort of playing a floating role around the middle, creating sort of opportunities for other players coming off the shoulder, and they're very hard to stop. They've runners from deep, they've runners from all over the pitch, and their off the shoulder play is phenomenal, and they always end up in a position where they have nearly an uncontested shot, in around that area. They come off the shoulder, and I'd love to see the scoring ratio from shots because I'd say it's pretty impressive. But look, I understand where the lads coming from, and Cavan, like, they're after going 5 weeks in a row, extra time against Monaghan, but the confidence that they'll have going into the game is going to be massive, especially after the win last weekend. This game might come too early for them to recover fully because that pitch last weekend was just shocking, and the legs being pulled off them. In a quick turnaround, a week's turnaround, it's going to be hard for players, especially after playing the extra time against Monaghan. So it's going to be interesting. I don't think it'll be an absolute hammering. I think Cavan will stay with them, and it's amazing, winning, the confidence that builds in through a squad, especially a tight knit squad like Cavan. And they'll have a point to prove after last year's final. They're not going to want to be the whipping boys again in Ulster and in Ulster final. So I'd imagine they'll be obviously trying to focus on it. And Mickey Graham's done a fantastic job of trying to, there's 2 Ulster finals in a row. Would you have said that for Cavan with the strength and depth in the Ulster Championship? I don't think so. But Enda probably just give a bit more light into how good Armagh actually are. I don't think they're as good as they were built up to be. They have some very good players, but as a team and defensively, I don't think they're sort of at a match to Donegal, and that's probably why Donegal looked so impressive last weekend.
Definitely, yeah. Cahair, watching Ulster football, watching Donegal closely, I know Cavan are going to have to try and play to their strengths this weekend, but they're going to look for weaknesses in Donegal. Like, where are they going to try and pick out, can you say?
The untested sort of element of Donegal in terms of a really big game and a really big test for them is still in the full back line. And to be honest, like, we're starting to think of them in terms of an All-Ireland. We haven't had an All-Ireland winner in Ulster since Donegal in 2012, and when we had them back in the final in 2014 and Tyrone in 2018. So, we're starting to think that this is a team that could win an All-Ireland. And when Jamie Clark took off on the first run and Stephen McMenamin pulled his hamstring chasing him last Saturday, my mind instantly went to thinking, like, Donegal won't win an All-Ireland without Steve McMenamin. He's probably probably not a big name in a lot of the country, but he's become their go-to man in the full back line. For he's done 2 brilliant jobs on David Clifford. At times left his own devices. He's done a good job on Killian O'Connor down in Castlebar last year. And like if it's a hamstring, as it seems to be, you're talking, we'll be doing very well to be fit even for an All-Ireland semi-final. And that is where, like, I don't know that Gavin will maybe ask questions of it, but I don't know that they'll ask enough to sort of affect the result. But the better teams in Croke Park could ask the more serious questions of it, and it is where they might ultimately fall down. And but there's such a formidable force around the middle of the field and an attack, and their goalkeeper is so good that and their half back line is so good from an attacking point of view that there might even still be enough about them to cover the fact that their full back line can be got at. But it is the big question mark over them, and it's as I say, I don't think maybe Cavan will be the team to ask enough questions, but down the line that's where they're at.
I was going to leave this question to later on, but I'll pose it to you now, Enda, and the three you can jump in this one. Dublin, of course, are the favourites. Some people are questioning Dublin this year, but they can only play what's in front of them in Leinster as well. Are Donegal good enough to beat Dublin, win the All Ireland, Enda?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, from what we've seen so far, I suppose Cahair's mentioned their Donegal full back line, but I think if you mention any team, you always say, you can get them at the full back line. It's Dublin's full back line, you can get at them. It's Mayo's full back line, you can get at them. I think, and to a degree, I would agree with it, or to an extent. But I suppose they've been so solid. Like Donegal have been I suppose solid. Really, Hugh McFadden plays a big role there. He tends to drop back a lot in front of that full back line, given that protection. And we've seen them do that the last number of years. And at the end of the day, it's all about the quality of ball that goes into to whoever's inside. And with the weather the way it is now, with pitches the way they are now, I don't think any sort of, I suppose, pressure, bit of deflection, the quality of ball just isn't the same as it would be as if it was in the height of summer, I suppose. And I don't think you're seeing that full back lines getting skinned as much as they might in the height of summer. Just the pitches are a bit heavier. It's just not as easy for forwards, I don't think, to get away from players. But to go back, yeah, I definitely think Donegal are well capable of challenging Dublin. I know I've watched Dublin now the last 2 weekends. Like you said, they can only play who you're up against, but I don't think they've just been as sharp in what they're normally good at. Their skills, they're not giving the ball away. And it's funny we're saying that, and they're winning games by 20 points or whatever. But it has to be said, you don't normally see Dublin do these kind of things. So one-off game in an All-Ireland semi-final potentially, yeah, I'd give Donegal every chance of beating Dublin, definitely.
It's going to be a good one for sure. Just moving away from, as we said, Dublin can only play what's in front of them, and what's in front of them this weekend is Meath, Joe. 10 years ago, Meath scored 5-9 against Dublin. They scored 5-9 last weekend. It's kind of written in the stars that there could be an upset.
Oh man, definitely. Yeah, we'll take any chance that we have, to be honest. But yeah, look, it's just for ourselves, it's good to be getting to the Leinster finals. I know Leinster isn't as strong as some of the other provincials, but it's good to keep getting there. It shows we're progressing, but we have to really have a cut at Dublin. To be fair, when you look at what we've done over the last couple of years, we've probably just tried to sort of contain rather than actually go at them and go and win the game. We have to try and push up. Put the pressure onto the kick out of Stephen Cluxton, because how good he is and how good Dublin are when they break from the back and just build up speed, because you can't defend them, and if you're actually going to allow them every single kick out, it's just going to be we're going to have no hope. So I'd like to think Andy will push up on the kick out, even on Sunday with Laois. The first couple of kick outs they pushed up. Cluxton maybe just wasn't concentrating the type of game it was, but I don't think he's that type of player. A couple of balls over the sideline, a few short kick outs, they're a bit iffy. So if you can do that and put pressure on them, but you have to take every chance. Dublin are so good. When you look at where they are, the type of players they have, like Mandy didn't start, Brian Howard didn't start, and that's probably Desi coming in, trying to put his own stamp on the team and not just a role with the team from last year. And and different things like that. You know, you look at Sean Bugler. You know, he's a fella that's probably Desi's brought in. But I think Dublin have a lot of them types of players. He could score 3 or 4 points in a game, 1-4, 1-5. But the main players are obviously Brian Fenton and Kieran Kilkenny. You know, they're the men that drive the team on. Fenton's unmarkable, to be honest. The only thing is Brian Fenton has got a bit of mileage out of him, and he has played well against him. He's the same type of fella, same type of player that actually can get up and down the pitch, likes to attack. So it's maybe putting Fenton on the back foot to maybe have to keep an eye on him, and that's what we'd be hoping for in the game on Saturday evening. So look, we just have to really go at them. Maybe ourselves, you know, we have a lot of young lads who have no fear. You know, a lot of our under-20s from last year who've never played Dublin in the senior championship game, and you know, that's probably the best thing. You know, because the more you play them, the more you look up to them, and you sort of maybe in awe of them sometimes, and that's what teams usually do. They sort of are afraid to go and beat them and afraid to sort of play against them. So hopefully our lads, you know, you look at Jody Morris, who's flying at the minute, Shane Walsh, I think there's a lot more in him, and I think he will come out of him. Matthew Costello, they're all lads that played under 20s, will be starting probably on Saturday evening. So them lads will go at them, and you likes to, as I was saying, Brian, Donald Keogan, at wing back, centre back. You know, these are lads that will have confidence to play against the Dubs, and you know that's what we need. We need a lot of confidence to go out and put pressure on them.
Mm. And Meath have been very clinical this year in front of goal, Joe, as well. 12 goals in the first 2 games. If it's going to open up at all, you know, you'd like to think from the underdogs' perspective that they're going to take their chances.
Well, you have to. You don't get second chances against Dublin, and if we can do that, we have finishers in the forward line. If we can do that, you know, anything can happen. You see when Kerry got the goal chances against Dublin, you do put pressure on them. You know, I'm not saying that you're going to beat them just by taking a couple of goal chances, because they'll go up and score 3 or 4, and they've done it a lot of times before. So it's about taking every chance. You have to take 90% of your chances. You know, there's none of this, we get another one. You know, our score ratio has to be very high. Our turnover rate has to be very high, and our scores from turnovers have to punish over, and that's where we have to look at and try and hit them. You know, from the half back line, full back line, and try and turn them over there, and see what they're made of. Because you know, a lot of teams have tried it and haven't done it, so we have to go in with massive confidence. It is going to be tough. I'm not going to say it's not, because you know the team that Dublin have are phenomenal. They just keep rolling them out, and you know it's a strange year this year, and to only have sort of 6 days from a turnaround from the Leinster semi-final last weekend. You know, Killian Sullivan got a bang on the head. Whether he'll play or not is another thing. Hopefully he'll be fine. You know, so these are a few small things, but as Enda said, it's one game. You could get lucky. You could have a great day. Dublin will have to have an off day probably for us to beat them, but it's not impossible. That's one thing for sure.
Definitely. Cahair, as we said, the Donegal Cavan Ulster final, it probably won't be, well, if Cavan played the way they have been recently, it won't be the whitewash that it was last year. We're probably looking at that for the Leinster final as well. Maybe they're going to put it up to Dublin that bit more this year.
Hopefully. Like I've been sort of bigging up this Meath team for the last 18 months, and I've had my fingers burned in doing that in Leinster a couple of times. I was at the final 4 or 5 years ago when Kildare, you know, gave Dublin a real good half in the first half, and whatever it was Kildare scored that day, I remember that it was the most Dublin had ever conceded in an Ulster final, and you're thinking, you know, it's a young Kildare team, the under-20s coming in a couple of years' time. Here come Kildare, and it just hasn't materialised for them. Meath have built sort of steadily enough under Andy McEntee there, and as Joe says, they're their own under-20s now coming in over the last 18 months or 2 years, and you know he's had a fairly settled defence. He's obviously had the goalkeeping issues, but he's had a fairly settled defence, and you know he probably took a bit of confidence out of. You know, I know he's a big fan of Conor McGill, obviously, and I think he's another very, very underrated defender. And he maybe be happy enough to see Joe maybe correct me on this, but maybe be happy enough to see Kilkenny at full forward on Sunday, and think that McGill might cope, fairly well with that, and O'Callaghan, it might just suit Meath's matchups a wee bit better than maybe having to reorganise their defence a bit if Kilkenny plays in, or maybe not being just as sure of themselves if Kilkenny plays out and O'Callaghan plays in.
What do you reckon with that, Joe?
Yeah, it's just whether Kilkenny stays in. That's the problem. And when he does go in, he goes in for a few minutes and then probably pops out. So it's how Conor won't move out full back. He'll stay there. He's very steady, and he's as Cara was saying, like he's one of the most underrated fullbacks. I think he's up there in the top 3 fullbacks in the country. So it's if he can have a good game and keep whoever it is. I think Conor Callan, he's all action left, right. Like McGill can't stay with that. People think because he's quite big and he's very quick over like that sort of 5-10 yards, and he's like sort of a Darren Fay type fullback. He'll get a hand in even if you think you have the ball. He'll come from behind, come from the side, and try and get a hand in. So yeah, I understand what you're saying. It's whether Kilkenny will actually stay in, because then we'll have to worry about maybe Conor being pulled out too much and leaving that gap in the full back line.
And as we were saying about Cavan picking holes in Donegal, but I don't think there's really many places you can pick at Dublin to go and beat them. But Meath's strong point this year has been their goal scoring, and it's something that you've done in recent years with Roscommon as well, where you can just turn a game on its head with a quick break and a goal. A goal or two for Meath in the first half of the Leinster final could really turn the game on its head.
Yeah, definitely. He'll shake things up, no doubt. Like Joe said, the young fellas coming in, for me, Jordy Morris, Matthew Costello, these have no fear. They've beaten Dublin under 20s, they've beaten them at minor levels, so they'll have no fear of playing a Dublin team, I don't think. And yeah, look, Joe said as well, it's going to take a lot on the day to get right. Dublin are going to have to be slightly off, Meath are going to have to be ravenous, really, really upward on the day. Lots going to have to go right for them, but I do give them a chance this weekend. Like I said earlier, Dublin haven't been just at the level that they normally are. They've just been a bit sloppy. Maybe like Desi Farrell's only had a few months with them, really, training with them in terms of, like, he obviously missed a whole chunk of the year with COVID, and he's only been back with them now the last couple of months. So he's not sure whether to, I suppose, put forward his way. He wants to play football. He's still trying to figure that out, trying to figure out the best players. Obviously Mannion, Howard, aren't playing from last year. McCaffrey's obviously gone. There's a couple of lads there who were kind of definites for Dublin who are in and out of the team. So yeah, it's going to take something like that. I know we played one of our provincial finals a few years ago against Galway, and we were really kind of similar situation, under the massive underdogs. It took a goal in the first half from Keane Connolly to really kind of give us that lift. And we had another one just right after half time to really kind of send us home. It's going to take something like that to really kind of get their tails up. But look, I genuinely give them a good chance of giving Dublin a good game at the weekend. I think they've been impressive. They've been unlucky in Division 1. They've only lost their games by a few points, a lot of them. And I think Joe mentioned about the matchups with Brian Menton and going up against Brian Fenton. I think that'll work. Like, Brian Fenton is top quality, but Brian Menton will be well able to match him and ask him plenty of questions. And then with Kilkenny, who's been man the match the last couple of weeks for Dublin, you stick Donny Keoghan on him, and Donny Keoghan has done well on him in recent times. So the players are there that can match up to Dublin, but it's going to take a couple of goals, something just to liven them up and give them that bit of boost, that bit of confidence early on. That'll give them a good chance of winning it.
Without a doubt. Joe, just going back to, as we know, the last time Dublin were beaten in Leinster, you bet them in the semi-final in 2010. As we were saying, Meath have, it's the word that's been sprouted around with this Meath team. This, they're going in as underdogs, but they have this fearlessness about them, the younger players and that too. I know the Dublin team of 10 years ago is a different team to the Dublin of now, but what did you go into that game with in that semi-final against Dublin?
Yeah, it was, when you look at it, like, Dublin won the All-Ireland in 2011. It's incredible that how our two paths have sort of went completely opposite ways from that 2010 year. But I can remember, especially in the forward line, we come out and we were going well in the first half. We got the first goal. It was tight enough, But I come out, I'd start at full forward, come out to Brian Cullen at centre forward, and he was like, "Who am I marking?" And we'd sort of a rotation within the forward line that we could just go in, out, move around, and literally the Dublin defence didn't know who they were marking, didn't know what was happening. And look, the goal Stephen Bray got that day literally was a fantastic start for us. It just sort of set the tone of the day, showed no respect. He could have literally just popped it over the bar, get a couple of points, get the stuff, but no, stuck it in the roof of the net and burnt aim defending at the same time, and everyone was looking around, what's going on here? And we probably just went out believing we could beat them. There was no fear, there was none of this sort of, and obviously Dublin have progressed a lot since that, but there was still they were one of the top 4 or 5 teams in the country at the time. So we just literally had no fear, believed we were actually good enough. We had a very good team as well, to be honest. When you look across the team of players that we had, it was up there. A lot of the players were some of the top players in the country at the time. So we competed very well. We were very confident, and we stuck it up to them, and we got goals, and that's the main thing against Dublin. If you can get goals, it's going to be a massive difference, and especially in a dead Crow Park, because if Dublin get goals, the Hill, the Dublin crowd, there's probably 40 or 50,000 there on Saturday night if the game was on, maybe more. Especially for younger lads, that atmosphere and sort of the nerves won't be as bad. Hopefully, anyway. So that would be another plus for me.
Because Kildare were in a similar situation as Cahair. You said only a few years ago, going into a Leinster final. Kildare in that situation, they had younger players coming up. You look at them, they were doing well in the final against Dublin, and you think in a few years' time maybe they could be the team to push them on. And Meath are in that sort of similar position now. Can you see this Meath team pushing on in the next few years and getting closer and closer to Dublin with more appearances in finals as well?
No, I do, and as the lads were saying earlier, we've been competing at underage. We've been beating Dublin at underage under 17s to the under 20s. Last year I was involved with our Meath under 20s, and we just didn't turn up on the day. We'd beaten them in the league quite well, as in we performed pretty well, and we were the better team overall on the day. And we have had 3 or 4 lads every year coming onto the squad, and Andy has done a fine job of, because he come in and the whole squad was sort of the shell. The conference was down after a few massive disappointments over the couple of years before that. So it was about building the conference up, and I think the conference is back in the squad to be able to compete at this level. I'm not saying we're going to beat Dublin. We're going to give them a right crack at it anyway, and that's for sure. And that's what Andy will bring. Andy believes we can win every game. He won't be going out saying, right, lads, we're not good enough to beat Dublin. He will believe we're good enough, and he'll try and instill that into the players for the last sort of 6 days up to Saturday evening. And if we can do that, and the lads really believe it, that you've got to have no fear. It's the same in any sport, any underdogs across the board. If you've no fear, you go at them and get a bit of luck on the day. It's a massive possibility. And look, a lot of people say it's a Meath man, big enough a Meath team, but it's true, and if it's a year for it, there's a possibility.
We'll go to the $1 million question: who's going to win the Munster final? Cork and Tip this weekend. Enda, did you see that coming at all from Cork there a couple of weeks ago?
I didn't, to be honest. I genuinely didn't. I thought Kerry would beat them, like they have on the past number of years. It's funny. I was only chatting to Conor Cox on our team, and he was giving Cork plenty. He was bigging up Cork. Like he'd obviously played with a lot of them in UCC, and was giving Cork every chance. He thought they were just obviously talking to them, probably that they were going well. And I know he's a Kerry man. And he always thought Kerry would eventually come out, but he did think Cork are going to be close in this game. He was telling me for weeks Cork going to be very close. And yeah, look, it was perfect for Cork. It was a slog fest. It was a dirty game to watch. And the key thing is they kept in it. They kept in it. They didn't let Kerry run away with it. They kept in it for as long as they could. Kerry started, I suppose, asking questions of themselves then. Why aren't we winning this game by more? When it comes to extra time, and mistakes start to creep in. And Cork, fair play to them, really hung in there. Got great goal to finish it off. It's so dramatic, but it's brilliant for them, and well deserved. And you wouldn't begrudge them a Munster title if they do want to win it. But they're facing Tipperary, who won't fare Cork, who have had Cork's number really last number of years between in the National League and in the Munster Championship. The times they've played them, Tipperary have been quite successful against Cork, so they won't fare them at all. I think if it was Kerry, Tip might be kind of second. It just doesn't seem to be there, and I think it'll be a great game. It's a tough one. I think it'll probably be the tightest of all the games of all the Provincial finals this weekend. Probably hunched slightly towards Cork, but it's going to be close now. That's a slight hunch, but yeah, it'll be a good game.
Yeah, it definitely will be, because from the two semi-finals, I think I saw that someone put Titanic music to Mark Keane's goal and Conor Sweeney's equalising point against Limerick. Joe, what do you reckon? Was it a bit of a mix of Cork getting lucky and Kerry not showing up, or was it a mix of both, or could you go on side on either of them?
Yeah, it was a big shock now, to be fair, but I don't know. Kerry shot themselves in the foot. I think the way they set up from the very beginning, Tomas O'Shea was going crazy about this, about how defensive and how negative they were, and you could see it from the outset. It was nearly get through this game in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, move on to the Munster final, let's get to an All-Ireland semi-final. And that's exactly the way it played out. And even the way the Kerry players actually performed, they probably were a wee bit lackluster in the way they were performing. And as then they kept Cork in the game. Luke Connolly, big high ball in, and to be fair, he throughout the game, there was a few, on the commentary, they were actually giving out about how many shots he was taking. He wasn't afraid to shoot, not always, he stuck one over from the outside of the right, from about 45 yards out, but then he kicked a couple of wide, and he wasn't afraid to take the shot on. And to be fair to him, he took the shot on to draw the game. He got lucky, and at the end of the day, anything can happen. And I think Kerry will be sick, absolutely sick. I didn't see it coming at all. And Cork have been improving. They were building themselves up to this for the last couple of weeks. I'd imagine throughout from probably the beginning of the year when they seen the draw for the championship, and they have been improving over the last probably 6 to 12 months, and you could see that in the confidence in them, because you haven't seen that in a Cork team for a long time. So it's it was a big shock, but look, that's the way it goes. And Cork are now in the Munster final, and favourites going in against Tipperary, and they probably deserve to be favourites. Tipperary were probably lucky the last day after the way the game finished, and Tip probably defensively, they're open to conceding quite a lot. They can score a lot from the two lads up front with Conor Sweeney and Michael Quinlivan. Would get on most teams in the country, so they'll be hard to be contained. But I agree with Enda actually. It will probably be the tightest game of the three at the weekend, and I wouldn't be surprised if Tip come out and beat them. It's very possible if they play well and they get some sort of a score up, and it will test Cork's mentality and how they've improved, because they've been mentally drained, I'd say, over the last couple of years, and if the players there can stand up, and obviously the confidence they would have gained after the Kerry game would be massive. So it's going to be interesting, and I'll be keeping an eye on it very closely.
Yeah, it's a relatively young Cork team as well, and as you said, you've been involved in underage with Meath, with kind of one eye around the country, seeing how other counties are getting on as well. Cork have really stepped it up now in the last while with their underage system too. Yeah,
like after winning last year, and they have put a lot of time and effort, and you have to do it, and you can see the benefits. The amount of teams they have in the county to be able to bring in and use them around, and I think they've done that. Meath for years, actually, we sort of took our foot off the pedal because we thought we were getting to All-Ireland finals back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and we didn't concentrate enough on the underage, and it takes effect maybe 10 years after, and you can see that we had very little coming through, and about 9 or 10 years ago we put it in place, our proper structures, and we all know the mess that Cork were in, and it's been broadcasted across over the last couple of years, and they seem to have got their acting gear, and then they're moving forward, and you can see it, and for Cork, like, not to be at the top table, it must be killing them, because they should be there. And look, now they're on for the double for this year with the hurling football, so anything could happen.
Anything can happen is right. Cahair, Tip and Cork, two counties that were down in Division 3 with Derry this year. Mad to think the two of them were in a Munster final. How do you assess the game?
We'd love to see an Ulster final in there at this stage. Totally agree with the two lads. Like it is easily the hardest of the three to call. It is, a game that has history in terms of just looking their last 8 meetings between league and championship. If you remove the 2018 championship game, which Cork won handy enough, the other 7 have been a kick of a ball. Tip have won as many of Cork have, and the league game this year sort of underlines that. It was 313 to 21 points. It finished, and I think there were soft enough goals that Tip conceded, and Tip probably should have won the game. No fear of Páirc Uí Chaoimh. They won the first ever game in the new Páirc Uí Chaoimh in the league a couple of years ago, and the whole element of Bloody Sunday, the history around it, Colin O'Riordan being back in, the hype over Cork, like Tipperary couldn't, the fact that it's not Kerry, Tipperary could not wish for a better opportunity to win a Munster title. Like, they haven't won one in 85 years, and they could not ask for a better chance than this. And I think a lot of it will come down to how Cork approach the game, because obviously Kerry were caught between the two stools a fortnight ago of probably looking at a wee bit further down the line in terms of their setup and their style, and also probably burned a wee bit by last year, and that has been forgotten a wee bit, like in the Munster final last year, that Cork scored 3 goals and I think it's seven goal chances that day, and cut Kerry down the middle, and sort of forced Kerry into a rethink at that point on how they defended. And I would say that some of the analysis in terms of Kerry looking well beyond Cork and looking at Dublin is maybe a wee bit unfair on Cork, because they'd have been very aware of that threat within that game. But look, if now Cork are caught in the same, do they look further down the line and think, look, we're going to need to play something similar, a sort of a deep line counter-attacking game in order to have a chance at an All-Ireland? But in doing that, do you keep a game tight? Do you keep an underdog that you might blow away in a game by playing that way, as Kerry maybe found out? So, and I think Cork will maybe stick with that template from the Kerry game. I would say they've probably found a way that is going to give them a best chance if they get out of Munster, and a chance against Mayo and possibly Dublin or Donegal. So I think it's going to be very, very, very close game, and would not surprise me in the slightest if Tipperary won it.
Definitely, yeah. We're only talking about it. I think it might have been. We're probably talking about 3-4 weeks now since the last round of the league. Would it be 4 weeks now? Probably would be 4 weeks, would it?
24th, I think, 24th of December or October, wasn't it?
Yeah, so it's nearly a month away. So, and we were only talking about it that day. Like Tip were down in Carrick and Shannon, had to beat Leitrim to stop them from being relegated to Division 4, and now they're thinking of possibly going to an All-Ireland semi-final. Like, it's just so as the year goes, I suppose. To the three now, I'm going to pose the question. I know it's a difficult one. Enda, I'm going to come to you first. Who have you got for the Munster title and why?
I have got Cork for. I just think they've been good all year. I think I know they're operating in Division 3 and mightn't be as strong as or whatever, but they've been good all year. I think they've added a couple more lads to the team, to the squad, and the thing that struck me most in the Kerry game was how aggressive they were. You typify Cork of being a strong running footballing team, and I suppose traditionally mightn't bring that level of aggression and really getting stuck into the game. But I thought they were that particular day, whether it was the weather or whether just the fact it was Kerry and they were really up for it, that really struck me. I just fancied them because of that, and like I said, they've been. I think Tipperary. At the end of the day, Tipperary just about got over the line against Limerick. Extra time against. I know Limerick are promoted now from Division 4, but they struggled for long periods that game. Limerick really were in pole position for long periods of the time, and they took obviously the wonder score from Conor Sweeney, and then the win in extra time. But I just think Cork have just too much over the field. I think they're strong in the field. Ian Maguire has been there for years. He's a strong midfielder, gets around the pitch very well. Up front then, Mark Collins has been good. Luke Connolly, just good forward as well. And there's a lot of talk about Quinlivan and Sweeney, obviously, but I think Cork are more rounded, not as reliant on one forward. And I just think they have more than enough, and they'll see it as a great opportunity. And that's why I'm going Cork. Not by much. I think Cork by 2-3 points. Won't be much in it, but I think Cork will do it.
Spot on. Joe, what do you reckon?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same, to be honest. Like, it will be tight, and the first 15-20 minutes will tell a lot how the game will go. If Cork start well and put the pressure on the Tipperary, how will Tipperary cope being in the Munster final, and will pressure get to some of their players that maybe haven't been in that position in a while? So it's finely balanced, and I think Cork's attacking prowess from the half back line, especially driving up the pitch and creating that overlap, it'll be hard for Tipperary to probably man that as the game goes on. The fitness levels, when you see the evening that was against Kerry, driving rain, the Cork boys never give up. They kept the ball for maybe everyone was giving out maybe for when David Moore kicked the ball away, but Cork kept the ball for maybe 2 minutes after that to create that scoring opportunity to work the goal. So they're very clever footballers. And mentioned Mark Collins, and he reads the game very well. He controls the game, and if he can sort of be that quarterback for Cork, it'll go a long way to them winning the game. And I think they'll just have probably a bit too much strength and depth across the board to win this one.
Cahair, what do you reckon yourself?
Just about Cork. To be honest, like Joe talked about the start of the game, and you probably find I know it's a word that they made a big play on themselves, their own Corkness. And after beating Kerry, the Corkness will be in full swing. And that can be a massive advantage to them. There's certain like up here in Ulster, there's Downness as well. Down are a county that you give them a run on you, they could steamroll you for whatever reason. The confidence gets up, and they could do things that they're normally not capable of. And the Cork are probably in that same frame of mind where confidence is a massive thing for them. And if they come out and start well against Tip, you could maybe see them have 4 or 5 points to spare if Tip get into their faces and make it a bit of a battle. Then as I said earlier, wouldn't surprise me in the slightest to see Tip win, but I would just nudge Cork.
I was hoping one of you throw a spanner in the works there and say Tip, but sure, we'll go Cork. I'd probably say I'd go Cork myself as well. That's wrapped up the 3 provincial finals for this weekend. And I just had, I don't know if you might have seen it on Instagram, I had a poll up there asking people for any questions that they'd like to send in. And I know it's about 6 months ago since I bombarded yourself and Joe with questions on one of the earlier podcasts, but I do have one for you here, Enda, and it's something that I asked Matty Donnelly about last week, so it's the same question again. How have you found this year, and how do you look back on this year being such a short campaign with the county? Because I know Matty said that the one positive of it is that it's short, and you've only got a month or so before you get back into the swing of things, that you can't dwell on it for too long. How have you found it?
Yeah, not far off that, to be honest. I suppose I enjoyed the club part of it. To be honest, the initial club part, being back with the club first was brilliant, and getting kind of a run of things with that, and just getting back to games. Coming back in, I suppose we lost the club semi-final, and I was back in probably the week after that, and it was strange because we were back in, but you were still waiting on some panel members to come back in. There was a county final to be played, so we were missing maybe about 9 or 10 lads still to come back into the panel. And then when they're back in, it was only maybe 2 weeks to the first league game. So in terms of prep and in terms of, I suppose, getting your panel ready, it was difficult for that, and for management and for players. So like a lot of players who had done well in club championship, who maybe wouldn't have played for Roscommon as much, probably didn't get the opportunity that they would have liked, because I think managers were looking at it. They were kind of going with tried and tested a lot of the time. They were just maybe probably worried about changing things up too much. So in that sense, it was tough for lads. who maybe had a good club championship and really wanted to cement their place on a team. Going forward, I do think it's the way to go. We chatted earlier about maybe a split season. They're talking about it, that'll happen next year. I think it's 100% has to be the way to go. I think it's, splitting your time between the club and the county, going back to your club in April was, it's tough. It's, you're in kind of county mode for a long time, and to go back to your club, which you like doing, but it's hard to kind of adjust your focus and go back into that level and then go back into the county, then getting ready for a championship. So in terms of the structures, I would like to see the same thing happen in that they're split, but in terms of the amount of time we had to prepare for games, and like if someone got an injury, basically any sort of a bad injury, you were gone. Talk about Steve McMenamin hamstring injury. If he has a hamstring injury now, he's probably gone for the year. So that's probably a few negatives of it. And obviously the COVID issues as well was a negative issue, a negative problem for us, where we had a case in the camp. But overall, I think it's the way forward. I hope to do it next year. A lot more enjoyable to split the season and kind of give your full commitment to your club and your full commitment then to your county.
Definitely, yeah, because even getting like your county players in playing challenge games and stuff like that too, it helps the team in the long run for the championship.
And just has there been any liaison with the GA or GPA regarding sort of split season or how it's going to go throughout squads, or is it just sort of discussion?
Yeah, so we've been in contact with the GPA. Like, they've been onto us quite a bit. I'd be friendly with a couple of lads in the GPA who work for the GPA, and you might get a phone call off them and just saying, look, we're going to send this poll out, to the squads and see what you think. We'd love to hear feedback from you. So in fairness to the GPA, they would be always onto us, in contact with us. My brother Donny is actually a rep on the team, so they'd be in contact with him quite regularly as well. And we have been sent, I think it was maybe a month ago now, we were sent, I suppose, what would we like, what would we prefer? Would we prefer a split season? Would we prefer the way it is? And just in terms of structure, would we prefer the provincials first, let them run off as a separate competition, and let them have the All-Ireland Championship, so Sam Maguire and the Tailteann Cup run off then kind of separate to the provincials. So all that has been kind of played out, and we have given our feedback to the GPA, who will, you'd imagine, talk to Croke Park and sort something out. But I was saying earlier, I seen today that they're looking at the split season. So from February to July, you'll have your All-Ireland Championship, you'll have your county championship, and then from then on, you'll have your club. But there has been contact, and in fairness, they have been good. Generally, the GPA, anytime I've dealt with them, to kind of give that information to us and kind of give you a shout to what do you think about this. So I think hopefully that's the way they'll go. Hopefully the GA will kind of take note of what the players want, and that'll be the way forward.
Yeah, I was just wondering, just if the discussions will start.
No, they have all right.
Yeah.
No, it's important to be kept in the loop about it.
Yeah, because the GPA get a bit of flack sometimes, and they do, a lot of work goes on behind the scenes with them, and people don't see a lot of the stuff that they do. So I'd have to back them up there.
Yeah, 100% agree from a player's point of view. Yeah.
Joe, a question for you as well. As you said, and as we've pointed on, that you have been involved in underage setups in Meath. There's another bit of a rule change that is being proposed, is the reshuffle and restructuring of the underage system, whether it be go to under 19 or under 17 or however they're going to work it. Do you think that's the way forward?
They need to do. I don't think this is the best way at the minute. Under 17, which is your minor, and to 20, there's too much of a gap, and that's the issue I have at the minute. Because by the time you come from 17 to 20, you've 3 years. There's a lot of lads that were saying we're losing too many players. I think we're actually going to lose a lot more, because if you don't make the senior team, and there's not too many lads coming out of minor going straight onto a senior team. A couple of years ago, when you was 18, you were 19-year-olds coming onto a senior team, and it was probably easier. Your body makeup is obviously matured another sort of 12 to 18 months, and you find it easier to come into a senior setup. But it's I think they do have to do something. The 19s, no, I never had an issue with the under 18 at minor, under 21, because there was lads at an older age. I know the gap was still 3 years, but you're an older age to progress into a senior setup. So I don't know. They do need to have a look at it, because the minors are too, they're probably too young and not prepared enough going into a senior setup at that age, and that's the natural progression. You come out of minor into your senior 20s, but it's I don't know what they're going to do. Maybe it's that one group of a 19s, but I don't know, will that work either? I found it very strange that they mixed it up in the first place, but it was we'll have to see, because at the end of the day, all you want is the best players coming through the squad, not losing lads, not sort of lads being maybe disheartened because they didn't come out onto another 20 squad from your minor squad. And you've got to try and keep as many lads playing football as possible, and that's the main goal, especially for Meath, who we're trying to keep. As we've had lads, we've been unlucky to lose lads to Australia. That just shows how good the type of players that we have coming out of the county. So we don't need to lose any more if they've maybe slipped through the net. So if we can try and keep as many on board as possible, that's the main goal.
I think I read there last week that they had the reason they changed from under 18 to under 17 was to do with they wanted under 17 to be the cutoff. They brought in that you had to be under 18 to go and play senior, but then the under 17 they wanted that to be cut off between adult and teenage football. But I don't know.
Player burnout, yeah. And it was all about player welfare and maybe not overloading too many lads with colleges and minor into seniors. But there was a very small percentage of lads coming from minor into a senior setup at that age. So it was probably a knee-jerk reaction on behalf of the powers that be. But look, it's maybe the science was behind it and it was the right thing to do, but I just don't think it's worked as well as they probably would have liked it to.
Final one to you, Cahair. Working in the media and COVID, could you sum it up in one word?
Jesus. Maybe. Probably fortunate, to be honest. Like, when you look around yourself and you're one of maybe 25 or 30 people in the stand at a match, and you're able to be there and get a sense of a game. It is very different watching a game there and sort of watching it on TV, and you're reliant then on what the...
Have any spare passes for Saturday evening, Carl?
I would love to be handing them out. It's been a strange experience. Obviously, like, we're used to being tucked up in the nice warm press boxes and doing so in the heat of sort of May, June, July, August, and now they're telling us we're landing in the middle of November and sit you boys outside there. But it's been a very, very different experience, I have to say, and the fact that there's no crowds at the games. To be honest, probably learnt so much more about teams over the last 6 to 8 weeks being at games, because you can hear every call, you can hear what's coming from the sideline, you can hear who, in terms of individuals and leaders, and you're looking at the players on the pitch and who's dictating terms and who's sort of organising their team, and then who in the management team is doing particular roles, and what the goalkeeping coach is doing in some respects, some of them in behind the goals and trying to dictate on kickouts. And from learning about teams from that perspective, it's been unreal. You know so much more. You feel like you know so much more about them, and the teams are finding it so much harder to hide anything at the minute. But it's I look, in terms of your actual job, your day to day, doesn't change a pile, to be honest.